So we've got a stereo manufacturer determines that in order to sell X units of a new stereo, its price must be P of X equals 1000 minus X. It also determines that the total cost of producing X units is given by C of X equals 3000 minus 20X. How many units must the company produce and sell to maximize profit? So in this case, there is no picture that we really need to draw, but we do need to know one thing about profit, and that is that profit equals revenue minus cost. And the other thing we need to know is that revenue can be found by taking the price of a object and multiplying it by however many that we sell. So what I need to do in this situation is first off, again, mention that this is kind of the objective function here, although we're still missing some bits and pieces of variables and things like that. But this is really what the objective function would sort of look like. Um, and the other thing we need to know is that x in this situation is going to be a variable, and it represents the units of stereo that we sell. All right. So now that we've got that covered again, we're going to say profit, which I'll label as capital P of X equals our price, which is that 1000 minus X, times our quantity, which in this case is X, minus our cost, which is 3000 minus 20X. So notice we have essentially three things that we really needed. We needed the price, we needed to know the quantity, which in this case was just X, and we need to know what the cost of which is, again, something that's given to us. I am going to simplify this a little bit by going ahead and distributing this X here, as well as distributing this negative to the stuff in the back. So we're going to have 1000X minus X squared. That's what happens when I distribute that X. And when I distribute this negative, we'll end up with minus 3000 plus 20x. I can also go ahead and combine like terms, and we'll have a negative x squared plus 1020x's minus 3000. So right now that is my profit in terms of just x, the number of things that I sell. So from here, I'm ready to go ahead and start taking the derivative and seeing what else I can get from here. Now, I do want to point out a couple of things. I guess I'll go ahead and mention what the domain is. And we're talking about the domain of x in this case. And so, first and foremost, I could actually physically make and sell no stereo systems. That's completely within reason, completely logical. It is possible for me to make and sell no stereos. Now, the other thing is and I'm going to kind of approach it from this perspective, if I look at my two auxiliary functions, which I'll call the P of X, the price, and the C of X, the cost, I'll consider those to be my two auxiliary functions. And so I want to think about what happens when I try to manipulate that X value. Like what X values are, I'm going to use the word practical. What X values are reasonable here? Well, so for example, is in this P of X, if I make 1,000 stereos and I plug it into this price, it means I'm actually selling it for $0, which doesn't seem practical. So that could be like my maximum there. The other option is to also consider cost as the other one. But I think in this situation, just saying 1,000 seems within reason to say I'm not going to make and sell more than 1,000 because then I'm just not going to be making any money off of that. Um, Again, you could also try to consider when would your cost be equal to 0, but cost is something I really like to minimize, whereas price is more of something that's going to, be more beneficial to me than anything else. So that's what I'll consider to be my domain. But let's go ahead and take this profit and go ahead and take its derivative. So P prime of X equals negative 2X plus 1020. So now that I've got that covered, notice that the 3000 just kind of disappears because the derivative of a constant is just 0. This is never undefined, so there's not going to be critical points that way, but there will be some critical points by setting this derivative equal to 0. So when I do this, we're going to take the negative 2x and move it over, so it's going to be positive 2x equals 1020, divide by 2, which should give me about 510 units. From here, there's a couple of things that I think are important. For example, I should either do the first derivative test or the second derivative test. I think the second derivative test is actually going to be easier in this situation, just simply because it's a polynomial. So if I come over here, and I'll use green this time, if I come over here and I think about the second derivative, that's just going to be -2, like all the time, no matter what the x value is. And so that means that since this x equals 510 is a critical number, if I look at my second derivative, it's always negative, which means this original function, the profit function, is always concave down. That means my critical number should appear at a local maximum. And so that's kind of a good hint there for this problem. So again, I did the second derivative test there. And so what I'm thinking at this point is I know this should be a maximum at 510. I can still verify by checking the endpoints of, what happens if I actually do plug in an x value of 0, and what happens if I plug in an x value of 1,000. Let me go ahead and I'll just grab a different color. Let's do this color here. Um, what would happen in this profit function if I plugged these numbers in? So let's see, I'll plug in x there, p of x there. We said 0, 510, and 1,000. So if I plugged in 0 into this problem, that would give me 0 here, 0 there, and -3,000. So I'm not making any money. I'm actually losing $3,000 by not selling any stereos whatsoever. If I plug in 1,000, let me do this carefully, negative of 1,000 squared plus 1020 times 1,000 minus 3,000 gives me 17123, so $17,000. And let's see what happens if I plug in 510. If I plug in 510, so negative of 510 squared plus all the other stuff gives me 257,100. So even if I check these endpoints, this one I wasn't really making any money. Even here, I wasn't really making any money. But so in this situation, this is definitely the biggest number because we're talking about, $257,100 versus the next closest thing I got was $17,000. So the question again was, how many units must the company produce and sell to maximize the profit? Well, the answer is they should sell 510 units. All right. Hopefully that helps you guys better understand this stuff, and let me know if you have any questions. Bye.